Well, hello and welcome to a guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I have a lawyer, owner of a law firm, Neal Goldstein, who's joining us, lawyer and owner of Goldstein and Bashner in New York for over 30 years, and now the best-selling author of Who's in the Waiting Room. Neal was kind enough to send me a copy of the book, open and honest. I didn't finish reading it yet, but I did start, and it is an interesting read. So I encourage you to pick up a copy, dive into it yourself. He's come a long way in his journey from his childhood and teenage years, where he was living with a mom who had MS and an abusive father, culminating in his dropping out of high school. MS is an awful disease, and I have a couple of people in my life that are being touched by it right now. So I can picture what it was like having your mom go through that. But I'm curious about how that affected you. So maybe we'll dive into that in our conversation. Neal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Moshe, and thanks for inviting me. It's a real honor. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to learn about the person who is coming on the podcast. People want to know, who is this guy, Neal Goldstein? Like, what's his background? So maybe you can paint a picture for us, give us a little bit of your story, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But I am curious about your growth in the ownership of your law firm, and what our listeners can learn from that. But I'm also intrigued by your story. So let's start with you, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Great. So yes, I grew up in Rockaway, which is a small area of Queens County, part of the city of New York. I grew up in the 1960s and 1970s as a youngster, teenager, and my mom had MS. She was diagnosed in the late 1940s, went into remission, and unfortunately, one of the few times that she sacrificed herself for anything was to have me. And after me, her MS started coming back progressively. And to have MS in the 1960s or 70s was a disaster. Now it's a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's a difficult illness to cope with. And of course, the families are affected. I have two brothers. One passed away 6 years ago. And that was a tremendous loss to me. I have an older brother that I don't really have much communication with. And my dad left us when I was 12. He was an emotionally abusive man. So my relationship with him was nil. You can imagine, after describing that, how my childhood was. It was very difficult, challenging, and ultimately quite lonely. And at some point, I dropped out of high school, thinking that was my best shot at having not a successful life, but a successful day. And it was only after I started embracing some form of relationships that I was encouraged and supported to go back to school, got my GED, went to community college, then realized I was pretty good at it, went to college away, then went to law school at night, and the rest is, I kind of feel like it's a story, it's a fairy tale, because the ending resulted in my mother being around to see me graduate law school. Then I started working the law firm circuit to some extent, if you will. I was really good at bringing clients in, and my relationships with clients were very good. So very early on in my career, maybe after 3 or 4 years after I was practicing, I was offered a partnership, limited partnership, and that grew into a full partnership, which is kind of where we are now, because my firm now is a successor firm to the law firm that I originally was hired at, and we do strictly personal injury law. And it's me and my partner, Robert Bashner, We have pivoted our firm in the last couple of years that we can talk about later on if you'd like. But that's where it stands. And that's my background.
Very, very interesting story. And there's actually pieces of, small pieces here and there that really sent chills down my spine. I want to dive into real quick your upbringing with your mother having MS. Your father left, right? So she's now raising you as a single parent. And she was able to do that with the MS at the same time.
No, my mother, for all practical matters, I mean, my mother loved me very much and would have done anything for me. But when you're going through your own hell, you don't have the ability to really parent the way that you would want to. And I didn't have the parent that I would have liked to have had. So in effect, I had, really no real, successful parents. I mean, my relationships with my mother was mother and son, of course, but it was extremely limited, as you can imagine. And I was doing things as a preteen and a teenager that you would never want your child to ever do.
Right. So you were running rampant, doing your own thing. And that's how you went through. So you alluded to, when you started to have relationships that you were encouraged to go back to school. Can you talk about how that came about? Like, how did you end up deciding to go back and get your GED and start your trek into college?
Well, specifically, and this is one of the things I talk early on in the book. When I dropped out, before I was able to get a job, I basically was walking the streets one day and I went into what was then a Jewish community center in Rockaway. And it was a place that I recall having gone to kindergarten. And I figured, okay, well, I'm not going to school. Let me go back in there and see what it looks like. So I was standing there looking at the atrium when I got a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and it was a young guy, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s. And he said, "Can I help you?" And I thought for sure he was going to throw me out. And I said, "No, I'm just, looking. I went to kindergarten here." And he said, "Why aren't you in school?" And I said, I didn't have a legitimate reason, but I was legitimately out. I wasn't cutting class. I was legitimately out of school. And I said, "Well, I'm not the school type of guy." And instead of making a judgment, he basically had this beautiful smile on his face and he says, "That's okay." And that grew into a really nice relationship. The first adult relationship that I was able to have. And he encouraged me not only to get involved in some teen programming, but then ultimately to go back to school and along with some friends that I made. And I took the shot, the chance, the risk of doing that, even though I was fearful of that. And that's kind of how I went back to school.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's amazing how, we don't realize the kind of impact that we can have on somebody's life by simply, accepting them for who they are and having a conversation and just being there for them in that moment. And, our listeners are all law firm owners, attorneys. You have this opportunity every single day. When somebody comes into your office, you can either look at them as a potential business, or you can look at them as a human being going through something. And if you can touch into the human side of it and understanding just a little aspect of what they might be going through, you approach how you serve them and how you talk to them in a completely different way.
Well, if I could just say, you hit the nail on the head, because before I wrote my book, whenever I would get a client come into my office, and specifically if the client involved a youngster, and if I felt that it was appropriate, I shared part of my story with them. And you have to see the physical difference in how that youngster then, when they were sitting and listening to my story, you have to see how the parent looked at the child looking at me, and just chatting and talking about, that life is out there to capture. You just have to want to do it. And it's not easy, but you can. And so, I always tell people after I wrote my book, and part of one of the things that I ask people to do to create, even within their business, a strategy for connecting with clients, future clients, potential clients, existing clients, is to share a part of your story. Now, that's not easy for everyone. Some people don't know what their story is. Some people know what their story is, but they don't want to share it. And I always tell people, you know what? Even if you don't want to share your entire story, because you don't have to, how about sharing a little piece? Just a piece, a little story of a story, which we can all do. It changes the way people look at you. You become a much more, you humanize the relationship.
Exactly. It allows them to see you as a person and not as a professional object, business, somebody looking for their money, the person who might be able to get them what they want. When they connect with you on that level, it starts to develop that relationship, and people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And that's really what that human connection creates. Is it creates that that know, like, and trust factor that we're all really seeking to achieve, especially in today's day and age where the relationships are happening online. Like, the in-person connection is so rare, that you have an opportunity in front of you when you have a client in front of you, even if it's in Zoom and they're in front of you. It's better than chat on Facebook, or something like that. So, being able to move away from everything being just business to sharing a piece of you, really does move the needle, in that regard. So I love that piece of advice. I'm curious about your experience in becoming a partner in your law firm, because a lot of our listeners started their firm from scratch. They didn't work for somebody. Now they become partner. Now they become an owner of the firm. And in today's day and age is different than it was back then. And there's a lot of lawyers who are trying to pave their own way. Having gone through your experience and understanding where the world is at today, what do you think is required for somebody to achieve that first level of success when they're first starting out? To really just establish themselves as a law firm in an area, practice area, geographical area where they probably have some well-established firms that are there already?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's asked by a lot of young people, a lot of millennials, and they ask me, how do I get clients? How do I build a firm? This is a question that's asked over and over again, no matter how many mastermind groups I go to. Those are the same questions, and they're the same questions because we haven't really given truthful answers to some of those questions. So, you could listen to your Uncle Irving, who told you to go join, the neighborhood civic association, or, your law school professor who told you go join the bar association. But quite frankly, that ain't doing it. That's not bringing your clients in. And you have to get a better understanding of yourself and who you are to start that journey. And I know that sounds a little esoteric, but it's vital to having successful relationships with clients who want to come to you. And you said it, right? You took the words right out of my mouth. People want to do business with people they like. And if you believe that, then that's where you have to invest your money and time in yourself, in the soft skills, in the interpersonal relationship skills. That's where you have to really put your effort in. Yeah, digital is important. I get it, but it's not the end all be all. It doesn't, there's a beginning and an end to digital. At some point, you got to meet the client face to face. And if the client doesn't like you, or if the client thinks you're talking down to them, forget it. You could have as much digital as you want. You're not going to get the retainer signed. So I try to teach people as best as I can on, evaluating who they are and finding out what they like to do. And if Moshe tells me, hey, I like, collecting, rare rocks, then I would tell you, go join a group that likes collecting rare rocks. And people will see you're in it because you really want to be in it, not because you're looking to get business. And by virtue of that, I promise you that you will ultimately get business. It's at some point you have to stop selling and just be yourself.
It's interesting that you share the rock example, because what went to mind to me right away is my participation in synagogue and the PTA at my school, and those things where there's opportunities galore that just happen because you're there, you're developing relationships. My kid is in Little League, and there's another person on the Little League team who's brother is starting his law firm, and he knows that I've got this Profit with Law podcast, and all of a sudden his brother is tuning into my show and listening and learning from me. That's one of the secrets that they say why Jews are so successful in the various professions, whether it's lawyers and doctors, because they go to synagogue all the time. And and they participate in this social community where everyone wants to give each other business. They're all looking out for each other. You have to find those opportunities to just be you. Like you said, I love that you shared that. I do think that there's there's a certain level that you can get to at the beginning where it's just, okay, it's family, friends, people know about you. You're going to get those referrals. And then the stuff that you're involved with socially will provide ongoing fuel to that engine. But it has an upper end capacity, right? And what are you doing now as a well-established business to proactively move the needle on clients coming in to the business? You have a well-established name, so you're going to get a lot of referrals. You're going to get people who just find out about you because they know about you. You wrote a book. I mean, people might have read your book. But is there anything else that you're doing proactively to find people who need your services?
As far as my law firm is concerned, yes. I mean, we obviously have an established name. A lot of people do know me. Quite honestly, a lot of my clients are either repeat clients or referrals from lawyers. So the same. There are lawyers out there that like to get their cases from other lawyers. So the same philosophy that applies to trying to get clients applies to other lawyers. If you want to get your clients from other lawyers, which, by the way, every lawyer will tell you, the best quality clients are repeat clients that are referred by past clients, or clients from other lawyers. So I understand why people like getting clients from other lawyers. Well, you better have genuine and authentic relationships with other lawyers. So I try to do that as much as I can. But it's amazing to me, Moshe, how many lawyers out there fail at this, at the relationships between other lawyers, taking for granted that other lawyers are going to refer them cases all the time. I'll give you a quick example if I can. Sure. I sent a message to a lawyer I know in a neighboring state, somebody that is fairly well known. You may know him yourself. And I said, "Hey, blank, haven't seen you in a long time. Hope all is well with you and your family. I have a case for you. Here's what it's about." The response was the following: "We don't handle those type of cases, but if you need somebody, I'll try to find someone for you." Period. Very, very poor skills. You couldn't say, "Hey, Neal, how are you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're okay." Now, I know that to some people that might sound petty. I don't think it's petty. I think it shows respect, trust, comfort, and that's not a person I want to deal with. So I still think lawyers don't get it. Many do, but many, many more don't. So I think, one of the things that I try to do is try to always improve my soft skills, my interpersonal relationship skills. When I want to try to meet new people, I get involved in philanthropies that mean something to me, not because it's the cool philanthropy to be part of, because I know that may not sound nice, but there are philanthropies out there that kind of sound cool because everybody's talking about it. But if that's not in your soul, if that's not really something that you have an interest in, people will see that, and you're not getting business from that. You'll get business only when people see that you truly have some passion for the philanthropy that you're in. I don't care what it is, really, but this is what we continue to do. And I continue to advise people to do when they're trying to find new clients or to try to make more relationships. The truth is, just create more relationships and you'll find clients. Forget it. Drop the word clients for a moment.
Yeah, I love that. And I love your example with, the attorney who responded that way. Sometimes I catch myself doing the same thing. Like sometimes I catch myself replying to somebody's message where they asked me how I was doing, or they shared something with me, and I go straight to the, brass tacks of what the message was about. And then before I send, I realize, wait a second, I didn't personalize this, and I'll go back and add a sentence at the beginning. But I can easily see how somebody, even when they genuinely care, can end up responding that way without realizing it. I recently interviewed Bob Berg for our podcast. His episode was not released yet at the time we're recording this, but it was before the recording was before yours, so it'll probably be released by the time people are listening to this. And Bob shared how every time that he interacts with somebody, he has basically like a card that has a picture of him, his contact information. That's his stationery, and he writes a personalized handwritten note and sends it to them. And it's amazing what a difference that makes. I had him on the podcast here. He did me a huge favor. He's a well-known author. He, charges thousands of dollars to speak on stages, and agreed to come on the show here, be interviewed for 30 minutes. And I was really thankful for the fact that he was willing to come here and have a conversation with me. And a week later, I got a note in the mail from Bob thanking me for having him on the show, and really genuinely appreciating the fact that that we invited him to be here.
He's a great guy, and one of the other things that I love about Bob is that if you see, you'll notice that he responds to everybody on digital. Now, it's not going to be a paragraph, but it may be, thank you, Neal. Good point. Whatever it is, it's a response. If you're not responding to people, I don't know why am I, I don't know if I just want to follow people just because, just to like the post.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. You can automate your social media only so much, right? But at some point, it comes down to actual conversations. People are replacing the conversations they used to have when you met up on bowling night, or when you went out to Great Adventures with the young kids group, or whatever it was. Right. You used to have those conversations, and now your kids are on Roblox and you're busy doing your thing. And so social is the only place that we have to have these conversations. If you're ignoring the conversations and you're forgetting that there is a human being on the other side of that post or comment.
I have a friend who's a lawyer, and he's extreme, and I like him very much. He's extremely well known in the AI field and metaverse and crypto and Bitcoin and all this other stuff on top of everything. And he's a good guy, really good guy. And he's already has meta law offices in the metaverse. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to curse here, but my point is, don't ever make me a cartoon, and don't ever make my client a cartoon, and don't make my law office a cartoon. Okay, I don't live in cartoon land. All right, that's fun when you want to hang out and have fun and do some quirky things. That's okay. That's cool. But don't in any way try to tell me that my client, when I meet my client for the first time, I'm going to look like a superhero.
Yeah. It's true. And we don't know where the world is going, right? It could be that the eventual way that we do business is in this metaverse. Who knows? But the reality is that we're not there yet, and we are in the human to human business, and we need to remember that, and we need to continue to find ways to leverage the technology that we have to enhance
Right.
the human to human experience rather than
100%.
replace the human to human experience.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
So I want to go back to your personal story. You managed to get yourself a GED. You started to go to school. Why a lawyer?
Really good question, because sometimes I'm not sure I know the answer to that. But I'll tell you where I think it might have evolved from. When I was young, and I was like, my middle brother was 6 years older than me, so he was out already. Maybe that was his way of dealing with everything that was going on in my house. My oldest brother was sent away by my grandmother to a religious school in Brooklyn, so he was out. So it was just me. And so I had to do the things that most teenagers don't do. For instance, I would have to go to the Social Security office, or to the Medicare office, or to the Medicaid office as an advocate for my mother for different things, whether it was to increase benefits or, to do something that would help her. And when I walked in, many of the administrative personnel, including administrative judges, would look at me like, what are you doing here? And so, I don't want to make it sound like I was Superman. I wasn't, but I certainly did a pretty good job at helping her. And I think that probably somewhere stayed inside of me. And maybe that's where this whole personal injury lawyer evolved from, because I knew I never wanted to be a white shoe corporate lawyer. It wasn't me. That's not who I am. God bless anybody who does that, not knocking it, but it's not me.
Yeah. It's really interesting because a lot of what we do is formed by our childhood, formed by our past, formed by our experiences. And so that's really interesting. And I don't know, I mean, is that like when you chose to be an attorney, did you choose to be a personal injury attorney, or did that kind of happen based on where you found your first job?
No. I'll tell you what I remember this I had a specific recollection. In my last year of law school, I went to school at night. So all of us, well, I was the youngest one. Many older people were going to law school at night, and everybody was standing around in a circle and say, okay, what law are you going into? What law are you? Nobody wanted to say personal injury. Everybody wanted to say tax law, corporate law, entertainment law, anything that sounded cool, except personal injury. When it came to me, I said, well, I figured I would dress up personal injury law. And I said, yeah, I want to go get into torts, which is a fancy way of saying personal injury law. But I kind of knew somewhere, in law school that this is something I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because today a lot of attorneys want to be in personal injury because they see what other personal injury attorneys were able to do with getting, large settlements and big paydays, and they think that that's that's the name of the game when it comes to personal injury. So that seems exciting, but it may not be the reality of the situation day to day.
It's funny. You're the first podcast that I'm going to mention this, and I hope I don't get a lot of flack for this. But a lot of law firms, not all, but a lot of law firms on their website will give you a list of all their verdicts and settlements. And I kind of wonder, what is that about? Why is that necessary? I'm practicing almost 35, a little more than 35 years. I've never had one client ask me, well, how much money have you gotten on my case before? So what is it about, listing settlements and verdicts? Who is that impressing? And I don't want to really get into that because I don't want to get bashed with a bunch of emails, but I don't think it's for the purpose of getting clients in, because that's not what clients are looking at.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that because logically you would think that the clients are interested in getting the most money that they can from their case. But to your point, what they're more interested in is they're interested in somebody dealing with them with compassion, representing them well in front of, against the other party or the insurance company, setting them up with the right doctors to get the care that they need. And if they're really injured and their life is affected, they want somebody who's going to care about them throughout this journey and be in their corner.
I think there was an ABA study that was done in maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The number one reason why clients leave lawyers is they don't have good communication with their lawyer. Their lawyer doesn't call them. The lawyer doesn't call them back. They don't speak to the lawyers. Some people say they never even met the lawyer. I have a YouTube video. I don't even know where it is now because I did it maybe 10 years ago. And it was simply, how come your lawyer doesn't call you back? And I think that got the most views of any video that I've ever done. It says something. And I could tell you that I get a lot of clients who come to me from other lawyers simply because lawyers either A, don't call their clients back, or speak down to their clients in they're derogatory. So they don't feel like they're being respected. And I mean, it's got to go both ways. Of course, a client has to respect the lawyer too, but I don't really get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. Neal, this has been a great conversation, and we're nearing the end of our time. I want to give people the opportunity to learn how to get in touch with you, get their hands on your book or whatever it is that you want to share. Every time that we have a podcast guest, I give them the opportunity to share something. Next steps if somebody's listening and wants to connect with you. So I want to give you the opportunity to share that. And then the other thing is I want to ask you to leave our listeners. They're all law firm owners, practically, who are listening to this podcast. Leave them with one parting piece of wisdom, piece of advice that you would like to share as we close the show out.
Sure. So my book, Who's in the Waiting Room, is available at Amazon, Apple, or Barnes & Noble, Target. So you could just look up Who's in the Waiting Room. I have a website other than my law firm website called Truth in Success, truthinsuccess.com. You could look and you could join the email list that I have there. I have some really interesting things coming out over the next 6 months that might help younger lawyers and millennial lawyers. If you agree with everything that I've talked about investing in your personal soft skills, and that is ultimately, Moshe, what I want to leave everybody. In fact, maybe we should budget literally in dollars and cents. That doesn't have to be a lot, and that's part of the key here. Investing in yourself, investing in your soft skills is not a lot of money. It's not Google ad money at all. And so maybe you should set aside enough money so that you can go out to lunch or go out to coffee with people that you like or that you want to get to know. It doesn't have to be an expensive dinner. It could be, hey, let's go out for pizza. Let's go out for ice cream. Let's go out for a cup of coffee. You would be amazed at what that can do. And then share a piece of your story. You don't have to do what I do and write a book and tell the whole world about how things were collapsing in your house, but maybe you could share just a piece. And sharing a piece will change the way people look at you. And I'm telling you, in the end, that is the key to get raving fans as clients, people who will come back to you over and over again.
I love that, Neal. Thank you so much for being here today. Folks,
thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Folks, check out the book, Who's in the Waiting Room. Pick it up on Amazon. If nothing else, you put it on your bookshelf so it looks pretty, but it's a good read. I'm in the middle of it and plan to finish it. I am a serial book starter, not a serial book finisher. So we'll see. We'll see if I can make that happen. But you can probably. Is it on Audible? Did you record an audio version of it?
Not yet. Soon to be.
Okay. But I love what you're doing and planning to help millennial lawyers with soft skills and interpersonal relationship skills. It's really a lost art today. You don't have a lot of practice in your upbringing, especially as we're navigating post-COVID, and there was first 2 years lost of socializing. They're just gone. But then in the new world, we're doing more and more work on Zoom. We're doing more and more work, virtually. Even lawyers who used to go to court all the time are now going to court on even though we're back in person, they're still doing Zoom hearings and Zoom appearances. So you're losing more and more opportunity to have human-to-human interaction, and that means that the people who stay on top of their game with human-to-human interaction are going to have a leg up. They're going to have an upper hand. You're going to be you're going to rise to the top because of that. So staying in touch with that skill set is really important. So I encourage you to check out Neal's website, which we will link up in the show notes. You can get it at profitwithlaw.com, where we keep the show notes of every single episode we do. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, we encourage you to hit the subscribe button so that you get notified every time we release a new episode. We're here at least once a week with amazing guests just like Neal coming on the podcast and sharing their wisdom, insight, experience, stories with you so that you can be inspired, invigorated, and educated to continue your journey of creating profit with law. And for those of you who don't know my story, I am inspired by my grandfather who came from Nazi Germany when he was 11 years old. And just with his father, lost his mother and two siblings in the war. And with nothing, from nothing, created a business and started to put away some of that money and use those assets wisely to create more assets, and ultimately was able to provide all 36 of his grandchildren with a down payment on their first home purchase. And that impacted all of our lives, mine and all of my cousins. And I'm inspired by that. And I'm inspired by that to help you do the same for your generations, for your grandchildren, for your great-grandchildren. That's why I do what I do every day. So I'm taking Neal's advice and sharing a piece of my story here as we close out the show, because I want you to understand what it is that we're after. And you can go to work and you can create revenue. You can replace a paycheck somewhere. But if you want to create true wealth from your law firm, it's going to require that you take not just good action, but excellent action along the way. And that includes the human-to-human interactions we talked about today, but it also includes being smart about your business. There's a lot of experts and conversations that we have here on the podcast where we talk about, making the investments in the right places and keeping check on what you're spending your money on, making sure that you're producing not just revenue at the top line, but also profit at the bottom line. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, stay here on this channel, come back and listen to our show as we produce more content for you week in and week out. Neal, thank you so much once again. Take care, everybody.